Thank you so much for joining us today, Lily. I am so excited to learn more about the important work you do. And to start off, could you explain what the Youth in Transition program is and who it supports?
Yes. So the Youth and Transition Worker Program has been around for 12 years now. 12 years. It was essentially started, it's funded, it's uh, the bulk of the funding is from the province of Ontario. And what they did back in sort of the mid around 2015, 2016, actually earlier than that, maybe 2013, 2014. The province did a set of hearings with youth who had been part of child welfare, so primarily Crown wards. So basically the CAS was their parent. They had been taken away from their families, and CAS was basically the parent. And they talked to the youth who had aged out of care. So those were the ones that had been in part of CAS for a long time. And then on their 18th birthday, they're considered an adult. And so all of a sudden, they no longer pretty much didn't have any more support after the age of 18. It's like, okay, you're an adult, off you go. And so these hearings heard from kids that were still in care and former kids in care. So they had been, they're now 25, 26, and talked about like what were your outcome, like what would have been better? Because the outcomes for kids that have been part of child welfare are not good. They're more likely to not graduate from school. They're more likely to be involved in crime. They're less likely to be employed. So the government's trying to get a handle on how do we better support. So as a result of these hearings, the government produced this program called Youth and Transition Worker. And the intent of the program really is to help youth between 16 and 24 as they age out of care, in quotes. We try to work with them before they turn 18. Actually, if they're in post-secondary, it goes up to 21. But we try to work them before that so that when they're hitting that point where they're no longer part of CAS, they no longer have the supports, they no longer get the monthly income, that we can help prepare them as they transition to adulthood. And so the program helps them find a place to live, which is pretty hard for an 18-year-old to find their own apartment. So we support in that. Help them find employment. We help them if they want to go to post-secondary, work through, okay, what schools do you want to go to? How are you going to pay for it? Okay, you're going to apply to OSAP. How do we do that? Help them connect them to mental health supports, especially that transition from child mental health to adult mental health. The supports and services are a lot different. Your wait lists are bigger. If they need any legal support, then we connect them to, you know, mainly legal aid, because they usually don't have money. But really, we're a connector, and support them in because once they're no longer part of CAS, it's kind of like, okay, off you go. So we're kind of that person in the community that helps them as they kind of age out and are no longer part of CAS, but still need that little bit of support. We don't replace we're not their parent, but we're more of a navigator and help provide some of those supports as they, transition to adulthood and hopefully become independent adults.
Honestly, that's I love that you approach it before they're 18 because I really do feel like it's so important that they feel empowered before they get there so then it's not so reactive. But all of
Yes.
this sounds so incredibly impactful. What would you say is the biggest need for the Youth in Transition program right now?
So right now, housing is a big priority. It's usually the main thing we work on with the young people. Housing and employment are kind of the two things. When you're young, part of our program helps 16 and 17-year-olds that are in need of protection and help them get their own place. So when you're 17, being able to, so we help them, in terms of looking, what's available. help them with, we'll meet them at so if it's an apartment, we'll meet them at the apartment. Okay, when you do a walkthrough, what do you need to do? What do you need to look at? You need to turn on right? Like the simple things like turn on the taps, make sure those things work. So kind of walk them through that whole process. Can they afford an apartment, or do you need to have a roommate? Is there like, what are those? So, because once they have housing, um, then they're able to find employment. They're able to, that stable housing piece. Because one of the things from the hearings, um, was that the youth said, like in child welfare, like we're moving all the time.
Yeah.
From foster home to foster home, group home to group home. So they're like, it's difficult for them to really establish a life because they're moving all the time. So one of the things we try to do when we work with them is, okay, let's get that housing taken care of, because once you have stable housing, then, you have an address for, all these things, and then you can work on kind of the hierarchy of needs, right? Then you can work on the other things. Stable employment and being employed. One of the things, I was doing a report, doing some analysis over the weekend, on, the outcomes for youth in care, and and what for the youth that go into care, what's the household situation? And the bulk of the situations are the families are on social assistance and they have poor housing. So when you look at, okay, the calls to CAS, what is the characteristics of the household where the calls are made? It's those two things. So either they're both in unstable housing, and they're on some type of social benefits. So what we want to do is, one, get the housing stable, and then get them employed, and to not, because what sometimes happens, okay, a lot of times, is
Yeah.
that yes, OW is great as a safety net, but to automatically go from CAS benefits to then OW benefits, once you're on, it's really hard to get off of OW. So we really try to go, okay, let's get you employed. And let's get you stable housing, because those are the two things that you didn't have in your family. That's why you got put in CAS. And so trying to do those two things, um, which is a challenge when someone's young and that they've had chaos in their life for so long, and then we're trying to support stability, can be a bit of a challenge.
Or even just with the price of how much it is to rent anywhere in our
Bonkers.
area. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
got to be really challenging for them.
Yeah.
So with that said, last year, Team Cornerstone proudly donated $18,000 with our fundraising, which was split, I understand, between the youth in transition and the men's
Yep.
residents.
Mhm.
Can you share what impact that donation has had so we can encourage our members to donate more this year?
Yes. So a couple things that it was able to do. One, it's able to support, basically having a knowledgeable and experienced staff person. Because in order to deliver these great programs, we need staff people that can actually understand, especially in certain regions, like trying to find in Burlington, Oakville, Milton, trying to find affordable housing for a 17-year-old
Like
takes a lot
impossible.
of work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Takes a lot of work. So being able to do that, also being able to support things like transportation. So we're able to, Uber is one of our friends, and taxis, and being able to, so if a 17-year-old can't make an appointment, they can't get to a location to look at the housing. I can't even think of what it's called right now. Then we'll, either get them bus tickets, help them actually get to where to view the apartment. We also can help pay for replacement of ID, especially kids in CAS. Because they move so much, they they're they're young adults. They lose stuff. Losing that. We can pay for some moving costs, because it's one thing to find a place, but it costs money to move. It costs money to get things set up. Like if they are able to rent an apartment, you have to get internet, you have to get all of these things. So we're able to support some of those additional costs with actually finding a place to live. So it's kind of a bunch of things. Again, it depends on the youth need. So some youth don't need as much, others need more, and so we're able to kind of have some of those additional supports that, you know, things cost money.
Everything. Yeah, yeah. And it's adding up
Everything
more and
costs
more.
money.
Well,
Yes.
so thank you so much, Lily. That's so wonderful to hear. We really do appreciate the vital work you're doing in our communities and the impact you're having on our local youth. It's clear that with our continued support and support of other locals, we can really change lives. So thank you so much for being with us and taking some time.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.